Hey there, beautiful people. Jonathan Mark Mendes, Painted Love, and welcome to my channel. Today's project is all about rustic cottage vibes. We're going to be using colour and design with stencil. All of my favourite things, a little bit of chippy paint, maybe a bit of blending. Who knows where this project might go? Let's take a closer look at the piece of furniture. When I first saw this piece of furniture on Marketplace, it caught my eye straight away for a couple of reasons. I absolutely love the overall shape. I love that thin, slender look of this cabinet, and of course this beautiful panelled door in the centre, which is reclaimed from an old window shutter. I think this piece has definitely been made by somebody else that's used reclaimed materials just to piece it all together to create such a lovely piece of furniture. I often look for this type of furniture because it isn't seen anywhere else. It doesn't look like a piece of furniture that you recognise with paint on. So I went for it straight away. I paid £60, probably too much. There won't be a lot of profit for the amount of work in this piece, but nevertheless, I knew that I would enjoy working on it. So to start, there isn't a lot of work to be done on this piece. It's almost good to go with painting. I have decided to remove the shutter door from the front and add a small amount of timber to the edge where the hinges are, just to kind of fill in the gap. There's a larger gap this side, and I think it will be so much better if I glue another piece of pine to the edge and then plane it down, resize it so the cupboard is a little tighter on its fit. So that's what I'm going to do this evening, because normally I start in the morning, but I'm a little bit ahead of myself. I'm going to glue that piece of timber on. Once that glue has been clamped and it has gone hard overnight, it means I can come in with my electric planer and resize the edge of this cupboard door, sand it, make sure it's a nice tight fit, re-pilot hole the screw holes for the hinges, which are surface mounted on this piece. I'm probably going to paint over them because we're going for that rustic chippy vibe on the overall project. So I'm going to get that done this evening, and then you will see me bright and early with some painting for the beginning of this makeover. Well, I'm finally here and ready to start painting. And can I just say, who said furniture painting and renovation of furniture was not time consuming? Because it certainly is when you're doing something as fiddly as adding just a few millimeters to a cupboard door. Now I'm going to explain the whole reasoning why I added that to the door. Firstly, you will have seen me move the hinges a little further in, and that was to gain me a couple of millimeters in the actual design and the placement of the door. And many of you will probably be thinking, well, why didn't you do that the way the door was, just shifted it in a little bit? But there is a whole other reason why I went to the extremes of adding this thin piece of wood. So originally, the measurement of this side, the hinge side, this panel, the shaker style panel that runs down here, was 4.5, so 4.5 millimeters. This side was originally 5.3. So what that meant was, even with the hinges pulled tighter to this side with a larger gap, everything was sitting slightly more to this side of the piece of furniture. And remember, I wanted to add a stencil design to this piece. So ultimately, had I used the center of this piece of furniture, it meant the stencil would run out in the panel, or it would run out on the sides as I wrap round. So that is why I went to all of those extremes just to get this piece of furniture looking good, ready for the stencil design. So in with my base coat, I've decided to paint this a dark muddy colour. I'm just going to have a look through all of my leftovers of chalk paint. I'm going to find a dark browny black colour maybe before we start adding some other colours over the top and then thinking about the stencil. So let's get some paint on this piece of furniture. So I have a lovely dark colour as my base coat. The colour that you see is a colour dump of all of my leftover dark coloured chalk paints, and it's come out pretty taupey and lovely. It's kind of a brown taupey colour, and I think this will be a really good shade to ground the whole piece should we be distressing a little later on in the project. So the paint that I've decided to use is Terra Clay paint. It's a while since I've used this. I've only ever used it once. I loved the overall effect that it gave. It's very water reactive. It blends really well. so I thought we'd give that another go. The colours that I've got is Malachite, which is a dark British racing green. The other colour that I've decided to work with is Pistachio. You may see it on top of the can. It's kind of Kermit the Frog green, and I'm going to mix the two. So what I'm going to go for is mostly the pistachio and add a touch of the malachite, and then I'm going to play around with both of the other pots to add light and shade in a blend over the piece. But I have thrown a spanner into the works because I also stumbled across a product that I haven't used in such a long time, and that is Crackle Gel by Posh Chalk Interiors. Now, Crackle Gel is one of those products that you apply to a dark colour, Crackle Gel, and then with an even clean sweep of a lighter colour, you would get lovely cracks through the top surface of that paint. Now, I'm going to be doing blending, adding water, lots of other things. It's not how you would use that product, but I've decided to throw it in the mix just to see what happens. We may get cracks. What I do think it will do is it will allow me to distress the piece a lot easier, but we're all going to learn and see what happens. It could be a big disaster, but fingers crossed it won't. So in with the Crackle Gel, I'm going to apply it in a thick, thin fashion over the whole piece. Okay, so I'm going to mix my base shade for covering up the main body of the piece. I'm going to go in with mostly pistachio and then apply a touch of the malachite. I am going to be jumping from the malachite and the pistachio on the piece to get a interesting kind of blend. I am panicking whether this paint, because it is very reactive, whether it will stick to the Crackle Gel. Fingers crossed. I will make it work no matter what. So hopefully we will have something that looks really good. I think sometimes when working on distressing, the happy accidents are always the fun things that happen along the way. So I'm not going to worry overly too much. Look at that colour. It's absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to go for quite a lot of pistachio, just so I've got enough for the whole piece. And then in with the malachite. Which is a much darker green. Not as much. I can always add a touch more. And then we'll mix that up. I want it to be quite vivid, and that has come out beautiful. I'm going to go in for a touch more malachite, I think. Yeah, a little touch more. Darken it up. I'm going for a sort of country ecclesiastical feel with this piece. I want it to almost feel like it might have come out of an old church or chapel, maybe even an old stately home. Look at that colour, absolutely gorgeous. So I'm happy with what I have here. I think I've got enough for the whole piece. And then you can see, if I take a little bit of the pistachio, that will be the shading. So I'll do lighter shading and darker shading over the whole piece. Now time to have a little bit of paint fun. So as you can see, I've brought the project up on top of my workshop table. This is probably something that I would not advise to do, especially on a tall piece. You kind of want it upright and in front of you, almost like a canvas. An artist would be looking at the piece and standing back and working out how everything blends together. That's probably a better call. I'm just trying to save my rug and my floor from getting lots of paint on it. So what we have here is the colour mix that I mixed up. I also have the other 2 pots of paint here to hand. I do not know how this is going to react. It's either going to grab really well and not crackle, or it will do the exact opposite. I have no idea. These 2 products kind of do opposite things to one another, so we're going to see what happens. One thing that I do think I might need to do is work pretty quick with the process until I know what's happening. So I've decided to go in with the solid colours from the can first, where I want the darker colours to be and the lighter colours. Darker maybe at the bottom, a little bit lighter at the top, and some lighter areas in the panels. And then I'm going to quickly go over with the colour mix of that beautiful shade of green that we made just a moment ago. So just wish me luck. Let's go for it and see what happens. I'm now day 2.5 on this project. I've stepped back into my studio bright and early this morning, although it is very breezy outside. Lots of sun, but very breezy. But it's not going to stop me today with finishing off this project. So the Terra Clay paint and the Posh Chalk Crackle gel have worked absolutely beautifully together. I wasn't quite sure, but I'm really happy with some of the anomalies it's created, plus the fact it's created some awesome cracks over the piece. I probably could stop this project here and now, just give it a top coat with Terra Seal and call it done, but I promised you some stenciling design on this piece. So my next port of call, the way that I'm thinking to proceed with this project, before stenciling, I'm going to preserve everything that we have here with the Terra Seal. The thing is about Terra Clay paint, it's very water reactive. If I have an accident with the stencil or drop water on this, it will create an issue that I probably won't be able to fix with the blend and the crackle. So I'm going to seal the whole piece, make sure this is all good and proper, and it will stay as is. We will be doing some other layers over that seal, so we may do a bit more crackling over the stencil design. I'm not too sure yet, we'll wait and see how it turns out. But we probably will definitely be sealing again the stenciling, using wax as well, and maybe some tinted wax. I really want this to look really aged. So in with the Terra Seal, just a thin coat with a large synthetic brush will do. Nothing too heavy, and then I can proceed with the stenciling. Let's talk stenciling over a piece of furniture that has a rebate or a panel, or if you're wrapping the stencil like I am right around the piece. There are lots of things to consider at this stage when choosing your stencil. So number one, I would always say go for what you love, the design really. And the other things to consider is where that pattern sits, the size and scale for the piece. So I've got 4 different stencils here that are all pretty good potentials for this piece of furniture. I'm going to lay them out. So initially, the one that I'd opted for was this one. And I felt like it was kind of that ecclesiastical feel. It's got those sharp edges, and I really, really like that one. But I have discredited it for one reason. The reason I've decided not to go with this one is these bits are quite out in the open, and Great on a flat surface when you're in the flat areas, but when you go into that rebate, it's going to be really tough to push down the stencil. And the other thing, the stencils come in different gauges of thickness. I'm not sure which way they're numbered, but this is quite a thick stencil. Unlike the stencil that I used on my previous project, this one, which is slightly thinner, and you might think, well, that's less quality, but sometimes a thinner stencil can be a lot easier. This one is from Dizzy Duck Designs. Check them out. I bought it on Amazon. A young lady from the UK designs all of these really lovely patterns. The rest of these three others are from Amazon. And this one's another one that could be a potential. It kind of looks like a stained glass window in a way. I thought that might be quite nice. And then this one, which has got these lovely little stars, and I think the scale, I want this to be bold and really in your face. And I think this is just a little bit, it'll be too dainty for this piece, which is a shame because I really love it, love this one. And I didn't check the scale. I thought the scale was much bigger and I thought that would be the one. Again, these ones are all very thick. You can hear them. Although with this being dainty, it would have been an easy transfer of stencil pattern. This one, because of the cutout work, it is a bit more flexible, so that would be good. The one that I really love, it's just those little spiky edges that I know will be very difficult to go in that rebate. So I've opted to go back for the Dizzy Duck Design stencil just because it's slightly thinner. It does have bits that stick off this, that flap around, but they're really easy to get your fingers into and press down and stencil around. So that's the stencil I'm going to go with. What else is there to say about stenciling? Also have on hand a good stencil brush and some tape. On a flat surface you could use a roller or a foam dauber or dabber, whatever you want to call it, but I like a stencil brush to really get in and stipple so you can push down that stencil and get in all of the crevices on the piece of furniture. The colours that I've decided to go with are a couple of terra clay paint colours. I have a little bit left of Prairie Dawn, which is a creamy white colour, and I've also got a colour called Moonbeam, which is more of a beige sort of tone, and I'm just going to go from one to the other, maybe adding a little bit more Prairie Dawn to the base where it's darker and the fresher colour at the top. I'm just going to make it randomly random over the whole piece. Wish me luck. I'm going to be in for probably a full day of stenciling. I'll let you know at the end, on the other side of the sped up video, how long it actually took to get all of this piece done. All of my stenciling work is now complete. I started this at 9:30 this morning. It's just gone past 12:30. So the whole pattern took about 2 hours to do, which I don't think is too bad. Normally with stenciling, it can take a lot longer. It's a pretty simple design. One thing that I would say to you is when starting your stenciling, make sure you get it centered. As you saw, I worked at the top of this cupboard in the middle. The reason I chose that area was because the panel work beveled in 3 different areas. So that was the most trickiest stencil to do. And then I proceeded down the center of that panel. And then everywhere else that interconnected was so much easier because it was on a flat. Okay, so I'm going to now explain some of the things that I want to do to the piece. The stencil design has lost some of the crackle underneath. It is a little bit bright for me, so I want to tone that down. So I'm going to do a few things. One of which is I'm going to fly spec the white areas with the background colour. So the original colour that I mixed, I'm going to take a small brush or a stencil brush, slightly water down the paint and flick over some of those areas. I'm equally going to do that with a similar colour to the original base colour, the dark browny reddy tone, that the taupey colour that I used originally, just to break up all of the brightness of each one of those stencils. The other thing that I'm hoping to do is use the crackle gel once again. So the crackle gel, it's a product that has different products that sit with it. So I'm going to apply a thin coat of crackle gel to some of these white florals. And then there is a crackle enamel, which you then place over the top. It's transparent, but you will get crazing fine hairline cracks in a transparent form, if that makes sense. So by the end of the project, when I start adding dark wax, you should see a little bit of crackle in those areas. So there are lots of steps to do. I'm going to start by trying to preserve what we have here once again. I'm going to be using the Stenciling once again over the white flowers, and I'm going to be very, very gentle. You could add the Stenciling with 25% water into a spray bottle, shake it around and spritz it to kind of just absorb, but I'm going to use a light touch with a brush. The reason I'm being a little bit cautious of that is this is a very contrasty colour. The white could spread once it gets reactive, so I'm not going to brush up and down because remember it's very water reactive. I could make a whole lot of mess by blending the white into the green. So fingers crossed that won't happen, but I do need to seal this down. But I'll do the fly speck first, and then I'll seal, then we'll crackle, and then we'll do a whole lot of other things, I'm sure. Sit back, grab another cup of tea, and enjoy. all of the TerraSeal has now dried, and I was going to, at this stage, add the crackle gel to some of the white flowers in certain areas, and then the crackle enamel over the top of that, ready for the dark wax. Now, there's something else that I fancy trying. It may go terribly wrong, but then we've got the TerraSeal on here, so I can always mop up and try and tidy this up. But it's something that I just felt might elevate the piece a little bit more. So in these crevices going down the panel, rather than aiming the dark wax there to make it darker in the crevice, I want to kind of make it a little bit lighter, so it highlights the crevice as if the paint's been dripping over time. So what I've done is I've gone back to the original colour mix that I made in the first place. There was just a touch left, and I've added a little bit more of the pistachio to get a lighter sort of acidy green shade. And because we've got the TerraSeal on here, I can kind of mop up, but what I'm hoping to do is spray in the crevice the slightly looser version of this colour, just dab it in and allow it to trickle down right the way to the bottom to pool in that little shelf. That's why we've got it upright. Once that's all done, I'm going to just leave that to dry. We're going to be waxing this piece, so this will be fairly good to have a wax coat over the top. And then we can move on to crackle gel, crackle enamel. I may cut some of that out or speed it up because it's getting a rather long video now. It's a simple application like we did at the beginning. Crackle gel first, leave it to dry, and instead of applying paint over the top, we will be applying the crackle enamel, which is transparent, and the dark wax will sit into all of those fine line crazing marks on the flowers. That was a lot of talking. Right, let's give this a go. Well, I'm nearing the end of this project. I have added the crackle gel, left that to dry, then went in with the crackle enamel. I have got one or two fine crazing hairline cracks on some of the flowers, which is what I'd hoped for, but I won't see the true extent of how good that is until I've applied a coat of clear wax, then gone in with some dark wax just to sit into all of those fine cracks. So there is not much more to do on the project other than the waxing and the dark waxing on the outside, but I do have the interior to finish, and I'm gonna leave that to you to guess which colour that I choose for this piece, or at least pop in the comments what colour you would choose to go with this piece of furniture. Do stick around to the end so you can see what I actually went with in the end. Check out the end results pictures. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for future tutorials. There's also well over 150 videos of painted furniture. Check them out. I will catch you all next time.
I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I've changed for the better this time. I thought I would never be fine. I strive just to say I'm alright, and for the first time in a long time I'm alright. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I'll push all my chips and call all in. I'll bet on myself, you keep stalling. I hear destiny and it's calling. I'll keep my head up high through the day. downs and lows, and where I'll go in life, still nobody knows. But I'ma choose what's right and take what comes and goes, and ain't no one in life holding me back no more. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago.